Internet, what it do? Tyler here from All Hell Breaks Loops, and this is the start of a new vlog series that I have yet to title. But with the revisionist history that the internet enables us to do, I'll probably go back once I figure out a good title and rename this. So until then, this is just my nameless vlog where I talk mostly about music things, and then I think a good way, it's almost like a journal to talk about like challenges or things that I'm excited about, and then there's some sort of accountability if I like commit it to video or I commit it to an audience. So that's where we're at. So I guess like the biggest development I've had with music stuff, other than a car kind of sitting on the line at like 8:30 in the morning, is the live setup. So it's a lot of things, but like the main thing is a projector. So like visuals can be connected to that. And then the core is kind of a tractor setup that is now like snaking its way out. So originally I was just like, oh, okay, 4 decks. That sounds cool, but complicated. I can't do that yet. And I couldn't. And so then 2 decks. Okay, cool. Get comfortable 2 decks. And then, oh, I've got a 3rd and 4th deck, and I should use all these remix decks or step sequencers or stem decks that like tractors, kind of pushing. And so I was like, okay, let me try that. And then what was really, really helpful was a step sequencer. But what's also interesting about that is that like step sequencers, well, this one in particular, it's locked to a grid of 16. So you can't get like, trap drums would be really hard because trying to go and you'd have to like, let's say the song is like 150 BPM, but it's like halftime, they have to go in, change it to 75. So that way then the step sequencer is almost in 30-second, increments instead of 16. And it's just messy. So then I kind of realized like, okay, well, I'm just going to play the strengths. And then I had a friend who I was jamming with, and I was like, well, what should we jam on? What sort of music should I dig up? And he's really into techno, and I wasn't really, it's not like I had a problem with techno, but I just didn't know a lot about it. And so then like, as we started like checking it out and just kind of playing through some music, I was like, oh, like this would work really well with a step sequencer. And it's just like, it's the most satisfying thing in the world now. So I have it, deck A, deck B, they're just normal decks. Deck C, a step sequencer, and then deck D is actually an input from a mixer, and then I can connect all the external synths and stuff to that. And then the other cool thing is that there's actually MIDI heartbeat that's coming out of the tractor setup that's being sent to everything. So all the arpeggios, all the step sequencers, they should more or less be in time with the tractor decks, which is really cool. And then the other thing is, then I decided I'm going to put an analog sidechain. I mean, it doesn't have to be analog; it could be digital. But a sidechain input or sidechain on the output of that mixer, so all those external synths then get that pumping, that really works for techno or EDM or whatever. And so it's just really satisfying to just like hit a chord on. I've got like a bass station 2. That'll arpeggiate, and then with the sidechain ducking, that's synced in time with that. And then just like throw like 4 on the floor kick on top of that, and I'm just like, whoa! I'm a wizard. I just made music. So that's been really fun. And then that has kind of branched out in terms of, actually it's like the visuals that's actually driving that experience. And so I was talking to a friend, and then I think I showed him like Simpsons Wave for the first time, right? Just taking like Blank Banshee songs and kind of mashing them up with like maybe third or fourth season Simpsons. And then also like doing a little bit more deep kind of video editing, motion graphics to make like the skies super hazy and purple and stuff like that. So then like we did a version of that where you can actually manipulate those elements, not as well, but in real time, and then synced with like the music, which is really kind of cool. So then for our first experiment I did one kind of outside of the group, and it was really cool, and I got a lot more interest I was primarily using Periscope as a streaming platform. And I felt like a little bit like I was cheating because I had to be like, oh, look at Simpsons. I called it Simpsons Wave. And so I think everyone was just checking out because it said Simpsons something. But like, it was kind of cool to see like, oh, I tweaked one thing, and then now I'm getting, significantly more interactions specifically from Periscope. And so we did it again with the group, and it was just really satisfying because it was like, I could just bring my friends in, and like in this particular group, like I think maybe there's a few of us who have been doing music in various forms and bands and things like that for a while. And then there's a few of us, or others, that have not, or haven't done it since high school. But then there's still what I would say like creatively minded people. It's just they weren't, you know, it's just kind of, let's say a habit. They just fell out of the habit of making music. So then, or art, or being creative. And it's really, really exciting for me just to kind of map out like a couple, like, okay, these buttons launch these video clips, and, you know, these knobs mess with the opacity, and here's a weird effect that makes it look like, you know, like a fly eye or something like that. And then just like kind of showing them the really simple basic part, and then how they can kind of combine opacities and it makes something different. And then that was it. And then I just kind of jam on the tractor decks, and then my other friend was just doing visuals, and he was like, he's not a trained visualist in any way, but it's still impactful and still really interesting. And then the other cool thing is that by doing that and keeping it simple, I could actually throw that board on, or that controller on the table, and then do the visuals in real time. So it's like a full multimedia experience, but like everything diminishes a little bit in quality when you try to do everything. So the music and the mixing isn't quite as good when I'm also trying to do the visuals. Visuals aren't quite as good when I'm trying to mix the music. But that's why it's fun to get there, come in with friends. And then also like, it's like a nice, no stakes kind of platform for just experimenting. So one of my friends is like really, really big into this Roland sequencer. And then I was like, oh, well, if we just like sync it up, then you can just kind of noodle around on top of existing music and just be like the icing. Is that the phrase? Or if you're like eating a cupcake? I don't really like cupcakes. So it's like the icing on top, which is cool because then it's low stakes. And then the other cool thing, and this is, I think, still coming from like a weird reaction to like being in bands for a really long time, and then towards the end just like not enjoying being in bands. And then this is really cool because it's low stakes and it's not, and I don't know, part of, it's kind of fun to like not have to worry about like the branding and stuff. It's just weird for the sake of being weird. Like you could just jump on Periscope and be browsing stuff and be like, someone is playing Vaporwave and messing around with Simpsons like visuals. Like this is really kind of a trip. So I think that's been fun just to think like, okay, like not a lot of times you get to like execute on art for the sake of being weird. It's usually like, okay, I'm gonna do this and then release it through SoundCloud, or I'm gonna work on these motion graphics and then put them on YouTube. Or there's some place where you're gonna stick it. And then with live, there's like the immediacy of, well, this is gonna go up, and then it's, I mean, you can watch it on Periscope after the fact, but like, I don't know, like being able to see something and be like, these people are doing this in real time. I kind of get it. Like I thought live was like or streaming was like, it wasn't that special, wasn't that interesting when I didn't really understand the immediacy of it. I was like, well, why not just edit better videos and then watch those? Like that will be more interesting to watch and higher quality too. But then at this point, we haven't even really done anything with interactions, and it would be cool to have it set up where it's like, use a certain hashtag and then that'll cue the visuals. And so it's like turning into a weird multimedia collective of like friends, and kind of at the core is some interest in music, but then friends with, you know, software engineering skills that could work on some of the, you know, API handshaking and stuff like that. It's kind of cool. And also low stakes because at the core, really to do that sort of stuff, I could do it all. Or I think where I'm most comfortable in terms of like skeleton crew is one person doing visuals, one person doing the music, and then it could just bloat from there, which is kind of exciting. So now it's just a matter of like, okay, like now thematically, all right, we've done Simpsons paired with Vaporwave. And then before it was kind of like, well, Vaporwave's kind of more sparse, and like, I'm not splitting hairs and like going to, you know, technically, Blank Banshee is more vapor trap, and yeah, this is more of like a future funk night. We're just gonna call it vapor asterisk for a wild card, so that we'll cover all the bases. Because I care a little bit about all the genre subdivisions, but at the same time, I don't. So next up, we're going to do a Seinfeld themed sort of night, and I'm not totally sure musically how everything's going to kind of come together, but then there's a lot of discussion about more like kind of like 90s, I guess late 90s or early 2000s, like boom boom bap sort of. Can you even call that like, it's not old school like rap or hip hop, is it? Anyway, boom boom bap, late 90s boom boom bap for like a Seinfeld sort of theme. And the same thing, you know, manipulating the visuals isn't going to be anything crazy, but that pairing for whatever reason, just from our like weird discussions and wouldn't it be cool with, it's like, oh, can we do this? And then we can. So then now I'm trying to get like really fancy with, last time I ripped the dialogue from some episodes of The Simpsons, and then I would go through and drop in cue points in Tractor. So then I can kind of pull those up and then have them say certain phrases. And then when Flux Mode and Tractor, that's when you hit a sample, and then when you release it, it continues playing that track where it should have been. So it'll actually play through the track. You're just kind of making it a little bit glitchy and jumping back to an earlier start. So I was doing that with the dialogue, which is kind of cool, because then there's the narrative through the whole episode kind of going, and then you can also jump to key phrases and make them a little bit more musical. So my friend also suggested, oh, hey, like, you should run that through the vocoder. So that way, like, you know, you could kind of turn it on, turn it off, and have that same sort of punctuation. So then I was like, wow, that's a really good idea. But with the way Tractor's set up, at least with my setup, it's not really meant to like route out to things. So then I realized, oh, if I run one thing through the headphone, you know, like it's just essentially like just monitoring what's coming up next, and then I take that headphone out and I plug it into the vocoder, it doesn't quite work. But I was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting workaround. I just like, I don't know, thinking of challenges and how I can kind of solve things like that. So I think that's all I have for today, but this is my first experiment, so hopefully it was kind of interesting. I'll have a link to the Periscope below, so you can check out, you know, stuff I've done in the past. And my favorite meme right now, link, comment, and subscribe.